This is Larry Henares making your day with part 18 of a book I wrote on Philippine history. Chapter: To political and racial conflict was added a religious war. My friends, Catholicism did for the Philippines what Homer did for the Greeks. It unified their culture. Further, the Spanish government achieved for the Philippines what the Greek city-states never attained: a unified central government. This was a tremendous leap forward because the idea of a federal government was implanted, at least domestically. A Pax Española existed for 3 centuries. Finally, the revolution over the centuries against central governments resulted in the emergence of a unified nation. The Philippines was governed by a theocracy, a Catholic hierarchy which governed the Spanish governors. The Cavite Mutiny in 1872 was in considerable part a Filipino religious rebellion in the pattern of the Reformation in Northern Europe. The execution of 3 Filipino priests, Burgos, Gomez, and Zamora, by inhuman garrote was akin to the burning at the stake of Thomas Cranmer and Hugh Latimer in Great Britain, lighting a fire that never flickered out. Filipino priests bore arms in the army of Aguinaldo, and thus to the political and racial aspects of the conflict was added the somber note of a religious war. It resulted in a religious schism. The Philippine Independent Church was formed and numbered in the millions. It was in a precarious state of birth. Father Gregorio Aglipay has been requested by the Catholic hierarchy to attempt to reconcile Filipinos to Spanish rule. Instead, Aguinaldo converted him into being his military vicar general. Mabini forced the issue. When Father Aglipay called upon Filipino clergy to support the Filipino cause, he was excommunicated. He promptly excommunicated his excommunicator, Archbishop Bernardino Nosaleda. Father Aglipay called the Filipino clergy into an ecclesiastical assembly in Paniqui, Tarlac. And on October 23, 1899, a provisional constitution of the Filipino Independent Church was drawn. Matters were in such poor shape, however, that Aglipay and some of the Filipino clergy took to the field to act as soldiers. The Filipino Church was in a position more precarious than the new government. More about this after these messages. This is Larry Henares making your day with part 18 of a book I wrote on Philippine history. Chapter: To political and racial conflict was added a religious war. Emilio Aguinaldo at Biak na Bato did not have a nation behind him. For the first phase of the revolution failed, largely through the efforts of the Ilocano, Bicol, and Visayan volunteers in the Spanish army. But Aguinaldo was wise. He was wise enough to interrupt the war, buy more arms, and consolidate his position. And that was the reason for the Pact of Biak na Bato. 2 years later, the picture has changed. Aguinaldo at the Malolos Convention had the entire nation behind him. Together at last, after 300 years movement to this point, here's to the Criolles, Calderon, Pardo de Tavera, the Principales, Paterno, Araneta, Ligarda, and the Ilustrados, Mabini, Luna, the Guerreros, standing side by side with the native clergy and the peasantry as one nation, one people, under one flag, united against the Americans in the first war the Philippines fought as a nation. In 1898, just before his June 12 proclamation of our national independence from Spain, President Emilio Aguinaldo, hardly 28 years of age, approached Maestro Felipe Julian, a humble church organist, to compose a national anthem for the new republic in a record time of 6 days. Julian never composed music before or since, so Aguinaldo had to explain. Something like Spain's anthem, Marcha Real, the Royal March, which we often hear in our Moro Moro stage. Thus did Felipe compose our national anthem with marginal notes that remind us of Marcha Real, the Royal March. It started with chords from the triumphal march of Verdi's opera Aida and ended up with the same notes going downscale with which Franz La Marseillaise begins going upscale. And like the Marcha Real, it was written without any lyrics. More tomorrow, my dear friends. This is Larry Henares, making your day, saying good day, God bless you. Thank you very much for being with us. Till next time, hasta la bye-bye.